Ever wonder what happens when a trade deal goes bad? Like, really bad?
Yeah, things can get messy pretty quickly.
Well, we're about to find out firsthand. We're diving deep into how Canada is fighting back against U.S. tariffs.
Hitting back hard.
Yeah, and we've got the receipts. An actual document straight from the Department of Finance Canada. It lists every single U.S. product that got hit with a 25% tariff. Buckle up.
It's a long list. I was surprised by the variety, really.
It's like they looked around a Walmart and said, yep, 25% on everything. We're talking chicken livers, toilet paper, snow plows, diamond jewelry, even .22 caliber rifles.
Haha, that's one way to put it. But there's a strategy here. This isn't random. It's a direct countermeasure to U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods. This is a trade war.
Okay, so rewind for a sec. This all started on February 4th, 2025. That's when Canada imposed this 25% tariff on over $300 billion worth of U.S. imports.
It's a classic tit for tat. But the real story is what Canada chose to target.
Right, because at first glance it does seem all over the place, but you're saying there's a rhyme and reason to each item?
Absolutely. Take poultry, for example. They're getting hammered with tariffs on fresh and frozen chicken, livers, even prepared meals. And a lot of these entries mention over-access commitments.
Over-access commitments, what is that? Like exceeding their quota or something?
Exactly. Canada agreed to import a certain amount of U.S. poultry, but then the U.S. slapped tariffs on their goods. So now Canada's saying, fine, we'll still take your chicken, but you're going to pay extra for every wing above our original agreement.
So it's like, okay, we'll still play ball, but now we're keeping score.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just chicken. Look at dairy, milk, cream, yogurt, cheese, butter, all hit with tariffs. But there's a weird distinction. They target powdered buttermilk, but not other yogurts.
Ah, interesting. Why single out powdered buttermilk? Is this to protect Canadian dairy farmers?
Maybe. Or it could be strategic. We need to dig deeper into their industry to know for sure. But the point is, every item on this list tells a story.
Okay, so poultry and dairy are feeling the heat. But this document goes on forever. Even tomatoes are causing a stir. Different tariffs for cherry tomatoes versus those for processing, and they can only be imported at certain times of year.
Right, so seasonality is a factor. Maybe they're trying to protect Canadian tomato growers during peak season.
So it seems each tariff is like a chess move, calculated to impact U.S. industries at specific times and in specific ways.
Precisely. And remember, this goes way beyond food. This tariff list hits every sector imaginable.
You're telling me we've got tariffs on home essentials, like wood, toilet paper, plastic bags, tools, even refrigerators. Then there's personal care items, shampoo, soap, cosmetics, even electric shavers and hair clippers.
And of course, luxury goods, diamonds, silver, platinum jewelry, all slapped with a 25% tariff. Ouch.
Ouch is right. But wait, there's more. Firearms and ammunition are on here too. That seems kind of random.
It does, but remember strategy. The U.S. firearms industry has a lot of political clout, especially in certain states.
Uh-huh. So maybe by targeting firearms, Canada's sending a message that goes beyond just the industry, putting pressure on specific interest groups.
Exactly. And it gets more interesting. They also included unmanned aircraft, as in drones.
Whoa, okay. Drones are a huge industry tied to both tech and national security.
Right. So this tariff could be Canada signaling they're not happy with U.S. policy in those areas too. Multiple layers of strategy here.
This is starting to feel less like a trade war and more like a symphony, all these carefully orchestrated moves.
Well, a high-stakes symphony for sure, and both sides are going to feel the consequences. But we've only scratched the surface. We'll have to dig into the long-term effects and what this means for global trade in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, we've unpacked this tariff list. It's massive. But before we go further, what's really stood out to you so far?
Honestly, just how bold Canada is being. No mincing words here. They're clearly aiming to make key U.S. industries hurt.
It's like they looked at the U.S. economy and said, all right, where do we poke them?
Exactly. It's a mix of economic strategy and political maneuvering. Really interesting to watch unfold.
Okay, let's zoom back in on those pressure points. Some choices are just so intriguing, like firearms and ammunition. You mentioned that targets specific voters, sends a political message.
Right, and it highlights something important. This isn't just about money. It's about leverage, influence, sending a message.
Doesn't that risk alienating potential allies, though? Like, wouldn't it make sense to try and win those folks over to their side?
That's a good point. It's a delicate balance. Canada is trying to apply pressure, but not completely burn bridges. They need to keep those lines of communication open if they want to negotiate later.
So they're walking a tightrope here. High stakes if they miscalculate.
Absolutely. And then there's the drones. Targeting unmanned aircraft is a direct signal to a sector that's booming, both in terms of money and politics.
Like saying, we see you, and we're not afraid to flex our muscles.
It's a bold move for sure, especially since drones are so closely tied to defense and national security, could be seen as a real challenge.
It's like a game of chess, with each tariff as a move. But let's not forget the everyday folks caught in the crossfire. We're talking wood, toilet paper, basic stuff people need.
Yeah, those tariffs on household goods are where it gets real. That's when the impact on consumers hits home.
Because those costs trickle down to us,
Right.
we end up paying more for those necessities.
Yeah,
Like a hidden tax almost.
exactly. And those price increases ripple through the whole economy, can lead to job losses, less investment, as businesses try to cope with higher costs. It's a domino effect.
Okay, so Canada's playing for keeps. They're willing to inflict some pain to get what they want. But doesn't that also hurt them, making U.S. goods more expensive for their own people?
That's the catch-22 of trade wars. There will be casualties on both sides. But Canada's gambling that this pressure will force the U.S. to the table to negotiate a better deal in the long run.
So it's a calculated risk, short-term pain for potential long-term gain.
Exactly. And that's why their choices are so crucial. Trying to hit the U.S. where it hurts most while minimizing damage back home. Not an easy thing to do.
This is making my head spin, honestly. I'm starting to see why trade negotiations are left to, well, the pros.
It's definitely complex. A lot of moving pieces.
But here's the big question. What will the U.S. do? Will they cave to the pressure or double down?
The billion-dollar question, right. It's a standoff. Nobody wants to blink first. We can look at history, analyze the political climate, try to make an educated guess.
So what's your educated guess? Based on your expertise, will the U.S. back down? Or is this going to explode into a full-blown trade war?
I don't want to make any predictions. It's too early to say. But the U.S. does have a history of hitting back when challenged on trade. And with the current administration's policies, well, I wouldn't be surprised to see them retaliate.
So buckle up, everyone. This is just the beginning.
We're just getting started, and the next chapter goes beyond the U.S. and Canada. This could have global consequences. What's happening here could ripple across the world.
Whoa, okay, now that's a cliffhanger. We'll be right back to explore those global implications. Stay tuned. All right, we've seen how this U.S.-Canada trade war is playing out, but zoom out for a sec. What does this tell us about the big picture, the future of global trade?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's honestly got a lot of people worried, especially those who thought, we were heading toward a world without borders, free trade everywhere.
You mean, like, is this the end of globalization?
Well, maybe not the end, but definitely a wake-up call. What we're seeing is things kind of fragmenting, countries turning inward, focusing on themselves, their own industries, their own supply chains.
But globalization has been, like, the big success story, right? For decades, millions lifted out of poverty, the whole world connected.
True, it has. But that story is getting complicated. More and more people are pushing back, saying globalization cost jobs, hurt the environment, even chipped away at countries' independence.
So is this like a pendulum swing? Did we go too far too fast and now we're correcting?
Maybe. This U.S.-Canada thing is a perfect example of how fast things can go sideways. One tariff leads to another, and suddenly everyone's economy is hurting.
Okay, so let's say this trend continues. What does it mean for us regular folks? Higher prices, empty shelves at the store.
Unfortunately, yeah, probably. When countries put up walls, those walls make things more expensive, so imported goods will cost more. And some things you might not even be able to find anymore.
So, less avocado toast and fancy cheese in our future. That's a bummer.
It doesn't have to be all bad, though. We got to figure out a better way, a better balance. Admit that globalization has downsides, but still make trade work for everyone.
But is that even possible? Or are we headed for a giant trade war,
Yeah.
everyone fighting over scraps?
It's going to take a real change in thinking. We got to ditch this winner-takes-all attitude. Most trade deals are like that now. We need solutions where everybody wins, both rich countries and developing countries.
Easier said than done, though, right? Every country wants to put themselves first.
Yeah, that's the problem. And look, this U.S.-Canada fight is just one example. There's tension brewing everywhere. If we don't learn to cooperate, things could get really rough.
Man, this deep dive has been eye-opening. Trade is way more complicated than I thought. It's not just buying and selling stuff. It's about power and politics and real people's lives.
It is. And the crazy thing is, it's not just governments and big companies making decisions. We have power too as consumers. what we buy, the brands we support, how much we care about ethical stuff, all that makes a difference in the global market.
So it's not just about watching from the sidelines. Our choices matter.
Exactly. Think about where your clothes come from, the food you eat, the companies you invest in. It all connects back to this web of global trade.
That's some heavy stuff to think about. We started with tariffs on chicken livers, and now we're talking about the fate of the world. Who knew trade could be so deep?
That's the thing about a deep dive, right? Never know where you'll end up. But hopefully you learned something today. And maybe, just maybe, you feel a little more empowered knowing you can be part of making things better.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time for another deep dive. Until then, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep exploring the world around us.